Hello and welcome back to another Planet Coaster tutorial. I'm your host Brothgar, and today we're going to be answering the question of how large do I build various design elements into my roller coaster for the maximum excitement rating. That's the question. So here's the quick answer before it gets complicated. Because there's a lot of variables and there's going to be a reason why I'm focusing just on Cobra Rolls today. And then in another tutorial, I'll cover various other rolls and loops and versions and all that good stuff just to kind of build out that whole repertoire. So essentially there will be a format that you follow and then you're going to be boom, set up to make the most excitement possible and the best roller coasters possible based on math and science and stuff like that. But the quick answer before I lose some of you guys in the details once I get into all these variables is that do you build these as large as you can or do you build them as small as you can? The answer to that is that speed is king. The faster your roller coaster is going in general, the more exciting it is. So therefore, a larger element, for example this Cobra Roll, if I were to make it really large, it would get very, very slow in the middle right here, and that's where the excitement rating is going to be the lowest. So if you look at excitement here, you see how it dips right here in the middle? This will be severe if it's very large. So the larger the element is, the slower it is in general as we're kind of moving through the whole thing. Therefore, your excitement is less than optimal, and your fear is also pretty low as well. So it's a good way to kind of keep it low. This one is kind of high, but there's a reason for that. Okay, so that covers large, right? So we know if it's large, it gets slow, and then therefore boring, and your fear is lower, and your excitement is also lower. But if you make it small, it's going to be faster in general, therefore your excitement rating overall is going to be higher, but your fear is going to go up, and it'll eventually reach a point where it goes critical, and your fear overcomes your excitement, and your excitement drops. I'm going to call that the critical limit, and we're going to get into some formulas and math and all that fun scientific study in a little bit here to explore what that actual critical limit is and how we can predict that, therefore giving us a chart that we can follow to make ride pieces correctly and optimally. So in general, if you make this too small, you're going to scare the crap out of your visitors and they won't want to ride your roller coaster, and your rating for excitement is going to be low. Matter of fact, it'll be so low that people won't ever want to get on it. Okay, so let me show you a physical representation of what's going on here. So this roller coaster right here is optimally set up. We have a 6.07 excitement rating, and your fear is a 3.92. So I'm calling this kind of your delta right there. You have a great excitement and not much fear at all, so you're right on. So if I were to actually make this smaller, right, as we're running test here, what we should see is that the excitement is actually going to go down and the fear is going to go up. We've reached this critical moment where making the ride element smaller is now working against us. And if we make this beyond like the moment of no return, what we should see is that the excitement is going to plummet and the fear is going to skyrocket. So we're not quite there just yet, but the fear is going up quite a bit. So let's just make this a little bit smaller. And what we should see is we should see this happen right here. Yeah, there it is. So that's the point. Excitement went way down and fear went way up just because we made it a little bit too small. So the question is, how do you predict that? So there you have it. That's the general information, but now it gets more complicated because I've just posed the question of how do I predict how large this element has to be to get the most out of the excitement and more or less not too much out of the fear. And the answer to that question, or shall I say finding the answer to that question, becomes quite a bit more difficult than I originally thought. It took me several hours to actually get through the entire thing of not only developing a way of figuring it out, but of testing it on various different things, because we have a lot of different variables, right? The first of it is the type of roller coaster. I mean, there's so many different types of roller coasters in this game, but at least we can limit it down, in this case, to the ones that can't go inverted, right? So we can cross those out because they don't have that type of element. So that's one variable. The other is the length of the physical train on the roller coaster itself. You know, is it 2 long? Is it 3 long? 4 long? 5 long? All that good stuff. The speed of the roller coaster, or more or less the entry speed. So the speed at the moment that it is right here when it enters the element. That's going to change depending on how big your roller coaster is, the scale of it. So that's another variable right there. The height of your roller coaster. Some of these roller coasters seem to have, maybe, this is another question, another tutorial for another time. Do roller coasters suddenly have a fear moment when they're just too tall? it seems like that might be a case. Or is there a fair speed limit to some of these roller coasters? That's another good question. So there's 4 different variables: the type of coaster, the length of the actual train itself, the speed, the height, the type of the element. In this case, I've controlled that pretty simple by just looking at Cobra Rolls, because that's why we're just seeing Cobra Rolls right here, because we're trying to develop what is the calculation or the prediction method so that we can figure it out for this inversion and then propagate that to all the different elements that you're going to get into once you get into the rolls. So figuring out for one should, in theory or hypothetically, should allow us to figure out bow ties, butterfly inversions, and all these other ones. If we can solve one, then you should be able to solve all of them, right? And then the size of that physical element itself, these are not so easy. Once you get into editing these things, that like the length of track, you at least have 15 increments, but these are infinitely flexible. You just scale it and you can get down to the pixel of how much you're actually changing that. And that can have a dramatic effect, like we've already seen, on your excitement and fear. So that makes it a little bit difficult. And the last of our 7 variables right there is the remainder of the track. For example, this roller coaster right here, when I was first starting off, I started here, went over here, went back there, and finished off over there. Just to give you an idea, over the couple hours I spent working on this problem. The remainder of the track is a big variable because you want to make sure that you're not going around corners too fast, because you're changing your entry speed in order to try to find your predictable elements or your predictable deltas that you can then work with right there. So which of these can we actually measure and use as a reference? And the answer to that is speed. Speed is the one thing that stands out as a measurable variable that we can control and that we can also plan to. All right, so here's the test that I ran right here. So the large roller coaster right here, again, this is the largest size possible Cobra Roll you could make. And then we also have the smallest size roller coaster, Cobra Roll, that you can make right here. And the entry speed, so the speed at the point where it's right here, if we were to just really quickly look at this roller coaster and look at the speed for it, you can see this is going to be 98, 90, and the mid speed right there is 75. So that's the points I'm measuring right there. So entry speed, mid speed, and exit speed. So if we take a look back over here at my chart, we have entry speed, mid speed, exit speed. So this is really what I'm tracking right here. And then you have the excitement total rating right there, and then the fear total rating. So this is what I'm recording based on the different speeds that I'm using my linear synchronous motors to get up to these variable speeds right there. All right, so let me run you through the data right here. At 72 miles an hour, I was not able to get through a large loop at all. So my entry speed, which is measured right here, so in this case it shows 98 miles an hour, which would be way up here. So 74 was measured at the entry speed. The mid speed, where the roller coaster, when the nose of the roller coaster is at the very middle of this element, it returned a speed of 36 miles an hour, and the exit speed was 69. So what we have over here is your entry speed minus the mid speed gave me sort of that delta right there, the difference between the two. So that is 38. So that is 38 miles an hour less than when I came in, between the midpoint and the entry speed. That's important. That's actually a very important number right there. And what we have over here is the excitement. So this is your excitement total rating, would give me a 4.6, and then it also gave me a fear rating of 2.74, if the case that makes sense. So excitement rating divided by fear rating also gave me another number right here. And as you can see, there's kind of an optimal separation between excitement and fear that then reduces as we get faster, and then suddenly reaches a point where it goes critical, and then therefore it becomes less exciting and more fearful at a certain entry speed. Okay, so that's also important because that gives us our cutoff point, which is measured by our delta, which is the difference between your entry speed and the mid speed of your element. I know I'm losing you a little bit right here, but once we get into the setup and test, it's actually not that hard, and I have a chart which will make that very easy for you guys right here. You basically just measure your entry speed and then match that number, and you're good to go. Okay, so not to bore you guys too much here with all the different data, essentially what I figured out is the moment just before the ride goes critical. You go too fast and then everything blows up, right? I figured that out for the large size, figured that out for the small size, and then made a chart out of it. And from that chart, I was able to calculate both slope and then use a slope-intercept equation that I slightly modified just a little bit here, essentially to create a a graph. Or somebody say we made a graph and then I used that graph to create this data. Math happened and I came up with this, okay? So if you're going in at 75 miles an hour, based on how many cars you have right here, if I got 6 cars, boom, 51 miles an hour. Pretty simple, right? Math, simple answer. Let's go ahead and set up a roller coaster and make that happen. Again, I'm going to make this public so you can just refer to it. And if you really want to get more into the math and all that fun stuff to show off to your math teacher, then you could just figure it out right here. Okay, I'm going to have links to it. All right, so let's go ahead and run through the process of setting up a roller coaster. In this case, as it pertains to a Cobra Roll. Like I said, more after this, we'll have to get into the different elements and they'll probably have different measuring points. But this is for the Cobra Roll of how we're actually going to use the chart and how that's all going to work right there. So the speed that I'm going to be measuring right here is what I want to do is measure the entrance speed. So I'm going to add one more length of track right here and click on speed, and you should see the number that in this case is 70 miles per hour. So that's what I'm entering this loop with. So if I hit delete at that point, that's no longer where that loop is, and then go in and create my Cobra Roll to the left. So at this point I'm going 70 miles an hour in. So if I go on over here to my chart, and again this chart is approximate. So depending on the different type of roller coasters, there's going to be some quirks that you might have to go plus or negative 1 mile an hour based on whatever roller coaster you're working on. Just because of how many different variables are in on this. This is a general idea. You should be within about 1 mile an hour of being optimal, just to give you kind of that heads up right there. And obviously if you go too lower than these numbers, you're gonna blow up. So I have 5 cars. I'm coming in at 70 miles an hour. So therefore I should be hitting 48 miles an hour at the very top of that Cobra Roll. So let's go ahead and place this in and then measure that out. So if I hit using my O and P keys right here, that changes the speed. I'm going to hit pause right when I'm at the very middle of this element. So right when it's coming on over here, and boom, right there in the middle. So if I go to my live data, it is 46, and what I want to hit is 48. So that is telling me right now is that this Cobra Roll is too large. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete it and make it smaller. The reason I want to delete this instead of just kind of scale it is sometimes you'll get a little bit of an angle that will build up there, kind of like we have on this roller coaster right here, where it kind of goes whoop and then gets right back in line. You don't necessarily want that because it's not very clean looking. So I'm just going to reduce this a little bit and press the enter button again, hit stop test, start test, press the O button. So again, I'm moving fast here because I just want to get through it. Hit the pause key, press O so it slows down a little bit. And then pause it again right in the middle. What do I got? 48 miles an hour. Boom! Nailed it. Second try. Not bad. Click autocomplete right there. So now we're going to see what this test result is by the end of the roller coaster ride right there. We'll speed up through it. And this is my result. So 5.66 on the excitement with a 3.62 on fear. Now, this is where you want to check to make sure everything is working right here. I'll show you a roller coaster that has a weird quirk after this one. Just because I know that this one should be pretty good. Fear is pretty modest, right? 6.5, 5.97, 3.75. There's nothing beat red right here, so that's working out just fine. Not to say that a little bit beat red isn't bad, but you don't want to see something like 11s, 10s, then you're blowing up your roller coaster, right? Excitement rating, it comes on in 6 point something, 8 point something, not bad, not bad. So that's the result right there. Now again, at this point, I can kind of tweak this. If I wanted to try to get 1 mile an hour a little bit faster to kind of boost that rating up, I can tweak this down. Now, this is something you can do. You can do a little tweak right here and see if this number is going to go any higher. Like I said, I've built in a 1 mile an hour safe to this. So you should be able to go 1 mile an hour faster at the midpoint right here and still be safe without going critical. And as you see right there, that excitement, even though I made it smaller, just didn't go up at all. And if we look at the speed right here, depending on how big this is, you may or may not get a measuring point right here in the middle. But let's go ahead and make it just a little bit smaller and see if I get there. Again, this is giving you that tool to get you really close. I would say within 90%. And at that point, we've gone critical. So we were really right on 2 steps before. So I'll just hit undo twice right there. Boom, optimized. That's what you want to see. And this is for this speed, that's about as good as you're going to get, of 5.66 and a 3.62. Again, you can can mess with it a little bit right there, obviously running your tests to see if you can squeak out a few more points. But let's talk about this roller coaster right here. This roller coaster has the exact same process that I set up right there as an entrance speed, right on over here, of 74 miles an hour. So looking at my chart of 74 miles an hour, I would have a rating of 51 miles an hour that I'd want to hit right here at the top. And what we see here is an excitement of 5.36, but a fear of 4.38. So watch what happened here. The fear is gone insane. Now, I don't know why this roller coaster acts this way. It's the only one that I found so far that it does this. And this is, I believe this is the American Arrow. This roller coaster has some weird quirks to it. So this is an example of why you want to check fear before you call this optimized, even though you've used my chart to get yourself really, really close. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna make this smaller. And what we should see is that fear will go down. Why in the world that happens, I have no idea, honestly. I haven't been able to figure out why this happens. But just to give you an idea, as you want to check that, this chart that we're using right here should get you close, right? It should get you within a few pixels of being absolutely optimized. So if I just make this a little bit smaller, right? Just a little bit, we should see our excitement rating be, just really high and fear being nice and low, like we saw right there. So here it comes. And the results are bingo. Bingo, real nice. So 5.35 and a 3.91. Again, I could tweak with this a little bit. And at this point, really not seeing a big divergence right here. You could probably smooth that out if it bugs you. But we can play with that just a little bit. Like I said, those calculations I've done is my best guess. Now, if we get this too small, we should pass over the critical limit and we should see excitement drop down and fear go too high. What are we seeing here? Even though this doesn't look bad, we've gone to 4.2 and 6.67. And this doesn't look anywhere near as bad as last time. So this is why I'm saying you can't necessarily trust looking at the fear heat map as much as you would like. And that's why speed is what you really want to focus on, and using that chart to get yourself close, but double checking your work right there. So that's what, that's as good as I'm going to get. Based on everything that I've tested right there. So them's your results. Look at that, 5.2, 3.68, not a bad result right there. So there you have it, guys. That's how you use the tool. Setting it up isn't that hard. You just use the graph, you use your entry speed, and you use your mid speed to get yourself really close, and then you double check with the fear graph, making sure anything isn't out of whack. And if it is, you just tweak it ever so slightly, and you should be spot on. So that is the Cobra Roll right there. Obviously, in the next tutorial or some tutorial after that, I'm gonna have to go on and look throughout the different roll elements, but you saw the methodology there, using the large and using the small, and a bit of math to predict how large those elements should be, and then being able to extrapolate that throughout different roller coasters right there. And as we saw over here, this is another tip that I just kind of want to show you here before I end this tutorial, which I know has gone quite long already, is different roller coaster lengths. Which one would you think would be more exciting? Well, my mind would say the larger roller coaster. Bigger roller coasters are bigger, more is more. Not true. So a larger roller coaster has the rating, these are all optimized, right? Has a maximum excitement rating in this test of a 4.7. But as we move down, what you see is the excitement rating goes up. And the reason for that is because that roller coaster, as it's moving through the element, is actually able to move through that element faster in general. So your speed, your mid speed, is actually much higher. So look at this, 6.04 by just using a 2-cart train. So shrinking your train overall will actually be able to generate a higher excitement rating than running a larger train. This is money making, and this is if you want to make a really excitement. So that's why I kind of stuck to 5, right? It's a happy medium. But that's a little pro tip, a little side tip right there, just to kind of give you guys an idea of that. And also the chart right there, it just so happened to work out if you, for every length of roller coaster plus 5, right? So every cart you're adding to your train, it makes a difference of 1 mile an hour difference, at least in the Cobra Roll, right? Between your mid and your entry speed. So that's how that just worked out. For some odd reason, the game liked me right there. So that's all I have for you guys today. I know this tutorial was kind of long and we got into a fair bit of detail, but the two things you want to take away from this, if you don't remember anything, remember these two things. You want to make your elements small, and the smaller you make them, the more exciting they're going to be. The two ways you can do that is obviously to make your elements smaller and also to make your roller coasters shorter. So those will both give you higher excitement ratings without making the fear go too high. Obviously, you can use the graph or the chart that I've made right there to get your Cobra Roll lined up, but we'll have to kind of extend these tutorials into the different roles as I go beyond just the Cobra Roll here in the future. So hopefully you found this tutorial somewhat helpful or informative, and if so, maybe I've earned your subscription, then thank you so much for that. I'll see you guys next time here. If you have a certain thing you want me to look into, I know there's a lot of different questions that were brought up in the investigation of figuring out how do I predict, said size for Cobra Roll, etc. A lot of questions still yet to be answered, so more topics to be covered here in the future. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Stay awesome, guys. Peace. Brothgar out. Okay, so for today's little extra information bonus tip here on the end, based on my last video right here, this guy right here, Purple Fresher Hasher, actually mentioned that I wasn't exactly commenting on the G-forces vertically as it pertains to the game. I was more using the world general understanding of vertical G, which is when you're sitting on the ground, you're feeling the force of gravity, therefore you are experiencing 1G, which is the force of gravity, 9.8 meters per second. But that's not what's going on here in Planet Coaster. Planet Coaster is working off a zero-base system, which is really annoying and it kind of drives me nuts. But this roller coaster, not going up or down, so it's not experiencing anything but the force of gravity, is therefore at 0G. So if you're going up, you should see that increase your vertical G. If you're going down, it should produce a negative G. So at negative 1G, you're actually experiencing zero gravity, as opposed to actually being forced up in the seat, which is strange, but there's a little bit of clarification. So in case that's confusing, then that should clarify at least the difference between Planet Coaster physics and real world physics, right? So it's off a zero-based system, so it's whether that roller coaster is going up or going down is how they calculate that. It's a simplistic version of G-force. And again, you can read through this on the last tutorial video right there. A little extra, I just figured I'd explain that just because there was something a little bit wrong with my last tutorial, but it doesn't necessarily change the fact that negative 1G is perfect airtime. So if you can hit negative 1G, aim for that. Anyhow, stay awesome, guys. Peace.